focus for Class 2 is the many faces of diversity in the classroom. Below are the analysis questions to think about before watching or listening to this clip. The purpose is to activate your prior knowledge with this topic and to help you focus your thinking on this topic this week. How do theoretical approaches influence your teaching in early childhood settings? What influences a child's development? And what are your unique characteristics and how do they influence your teaching practice? To illustrate some diverse stories in our school, an interesting feature of the Ontario Ministry of Education website includes featured stories in FDK. Please go now to the link on FDK in Northern Ontario at Evergreen Public School in Kenora. Consider this story as well as others on this webpage. How are these schools promoting family and community involvement? Bernard says it is important to question theories and assumptions of the human development because cross-cultural evidence suggests there may be more than one pathway towards normal development. This quote reminds us as educators to consider development embedded within culture. For example, educators may worry when children do not make eye contact or show little evidence of independence, but some Canadian Indigenous groups consider eye contact disrespectful when an adult is speaking to a child, and Latin American cultures value a child's affection and strong ties with parents. Understanding development embedded within culture demonstrates that there may be multiple pathways to what is considered normal development. We will be discussing a few learning theories that relate to early childhood education. Culturally responsive pedagogy is a way of thinking about how we teach our diverse learners. Sociocultural awareness. Educators recognize that the ways people perceive the world, interact with each other, and approach learning are deeply influenced by such factors as culture, ethnicity, social class, and language. This understanding enables teachers to cross cultural boundaries, separating them from their students. High expectations. Educators affirm their students' knowledge and experiences by encouraging students as experts of learning. For the desire to make a difference, educators are responsible for bringing about educational change by designing learning and teaching opportunities to be responsive to diverse learners. The deep knowledge of the learners. Educators are familiar with their learners' prior knowledge, beliefs, and personal and cultural experiences. As a constructivist approach, educators understand learning as an active, constructive approach, where learners make new meaning. Culturally responsive pedagogy. Educators design instruction that scaffolds what students already know, while encouraging them to explore beyond the familiar. Educators who are committed to creating culturally responsive classrooms ensure that barriers to student achievement and well-being are removed. Bronfenbuehler ecological systems theory describes four distinct concentric systems that directly or indirectly influence a child's development. This theory moves beyond focusing on a child's biology and surmises that children do not develop in isolation, but within a variety of contexts or environments in which they constantly interact. A fifth system, chrono, is also often added to incorporate the dimension of time and internal or external changes or events, such as a death in the family or a move across the country. For microsystems, they consist of the most immediate and earliest contexts, such as family, playmates, daycare, school, and neighborhood. These relationships are bidirectional, as the child's family can influence the behavior of the child and vice versa. While parenting is the primary proximal process, parents often share caretaking. Mesosystem focuses on the connections between two or more microsystems. What occurs in the home microsystem can influence what happens at school or in the playground, and once again, vice versa. Exosystem, although the child does not directly encounter the system, it impacts the child's development as it includes school boards and media. For example, a school's policy on children with special needs or English language learners can influence the educators as well as the child. In the microsystem, this societal umbrella influences layers linking to cultural characteristics, political upheaval, economic disruptions, and unstable environments. Ecological systems theory reminds educators of the complex systems that children are embedded within and may influence their development. The work of sociocultural theory is to explain how individual cognitive functioning is related to cultural, institutional, and historical context. Emerging from Vygotsky's theory of social constructivism, sociocultural theory identifies the importance of culture, environment, and history in the construction of meaning. Central to sociocultural theory is the idea that human social interaction occurs within a cultural context and is simultaneously an individual and a social process. Bach and Dierking say humans are at once individuals and members of a larger group or society. Learning is both an individual and group experience. What someone learns is inextricably bound to the cultural and historical context in which that learning occurs. For example, in Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, students move from high support from an educator to low support and show more responsibility as a learner. In the ZPD, educators and students share the responsibility as new learning occurs and students complete tasks with initial support. Based on your experiences, what types of activities move students from high to low educational support in early childhood learning? We've considered larger sociocultural factors, and now we will spend some time thinking about individual factors that contribute to a child's uniqueness. What comprises our children's personalities? There are some differences between personality and temperament. Personality includes characteristic patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that make a person unique. Personality is superimposed onto temperament, which is present from birth. Temperament includes underlying behaviors across settings, behavioral manifestations resulting from biology. Please view the video as Thomas and Chess discuss temperament qualities in children. Understanding temperaments allows educators to be sensitive to the needs of all children rather than take some of their behaviors personally. Here are the 9 temperaments according to Thomas and Chess: sensitivity, intensity, activity, adaptability, approach withdrawal, persistence, attention span, biological rhythmicity, regularity, mood, and detractibility. Temperament is moderately stable throughout infancy, childhood, and adolescence, but there are individual differences in behavioral style. Environment can affect the development of temperament, such as a predisposition to a certain temperament supported by parental response. Plus, there is a genetic component. Difficult temperamental children can cause parents to withdraw, making the child's behavior worse and more difficult to handle. Or, parents and teachers can respond in such a way to modify the child's temperament in a more positive direction. How can you use knowledge of temperament to inform your own practice? Developing a sense of self includes defining perceptions, feelings, judgments, and beliefs about who you are. 3 components include self-concept, the personal assessment of strengths and weaknesses; self-esteem, the judgment and feelings about one's worth and value; self-worth, perceived competencies in a specific area. For example, how well a child completes tasks and how well they make friends leads them to develop their sense of self in a positive or a negative way. From preschoolers to adolescents, there are a vast array of developmental changes in self-concept. Preschoolers often reference possessions, physical characteristics, preferences, and competencies, such as, "I like cars and trucks." School-aged children often refer to their emotions, their social groups, and comparisons with peers. As early childhood educators, we strive to promote positive sense of self-concept, self-esteem, and self-worth with our children by designing inclusive learning environments that are grounded in a community-based approach. The mosaic presentations this week are to be presented in tutorial, and your synthesis questions for this clip include: how can theoretical approaches inform and enrich your practice and student experiences in your classroom? And number 2, how can you elicit an understanding of who your students are?